Hey guys, welcome to this week's episode of the Intentional Life podcast. I'm Amy Selby and this is my husband,
AJ Selby.
And we love hearing from you guys, hearing what questions and topics that you have. So we love to just dive into those, answer those. We love talking about, on this podcast, obviously, but just in general in our life, we love talking about how to just add that extra bit of intentionality into whatever it is that you're doing, marriage, dating, your job, your walk with the Lord, and how that little bit of extra intentionality makes something that could be so overwhelming, maybe just a little less overwhelming.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
You want to jump into our question today?
Sure.
You want to read it
I just
for us?
realized I forgot I had the question this time. The question that we have today just states the importance of a single season and contentment. And so if I had to guess what this person is talking about, it has to do with the importance of not always being in a dating relationship and the contentment that goes with that.
Yeah. It's a good question. I think that's something that most of us, I would say all of us, but some people maybe don't wrestle with that. But I think a lot of us do wrestle with being single at times.
Or have wrestled.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know I definitely had seasons of wrestling through that. And you and I have very different experiences when it comes to relationships and like dating relationships, romantic relationships. So we can talk about that a little bit because I'm sure that's pertinent to this conversation. But I think especially in culture, at least here in the U.S., culture pulls you in so many different directions, which is so confusing. Like I feel like on one hand, it's like you need romance, you need like somebody in your life to complete you. And on the other hand, it's like you don't need anybody to complete you. You don't need forget having relationships or just date to have fun and, don't look for anything serious. Do whatever you want. Like I feel like there's just so many different messages pulling at us in culture, and especially depending on what part of the United States you're in depends on even more of like what cultural pull you are in. Like for us, we're in the Bible Belt. I grew up in the Bible Belt. I grew up in a Christian home, grew up going to church. So I grew up in that world. So very much Bible Belt upbringing, which I'm thankful for. But there is very much a mindset in general of you definitely should get married. Which there's nothing wrong with wanting to get married, obviously. Yeah. But when you're in a culture that is, hitting the mic. When you're in a culture that's like, it's almost shameful if you're not married past a certain age. And I feel like I could be wrong, but I feel like maybe more as a woman, it's like almost feels a little more shameful if you're not married yet. They're like, that tugs at people too. Like, well, cultural standard says, social standard says, I should be married by now and wanting to have, a husband and kids and all of this by a certain age and by a certain time. And that could be really hard to try and navigate and figure out as a young person, just literally trying to figure out life.
Yeah.
And feeling like I need this because I feel like I want it and I feel like I need it and culture's telling me I need it and my church is telling me I need it and everybody's telling me I'm supposed to have this figured out by this point and I'm supposed to have met somebody and all the things. And that can be really stressful. And it can be hard to be content being single if you're in an environment like that. And I'm not saying everybody who's in the Bible Belt treats you that way, or not everybody feels that. I'm just saying culturally it can be that way. I can't really speak as much for other parts of the country because I haven't really lived in other parts of the country. But you have. Sometimes you have to work at contentment. At least I guess I should just speak for myself. I had to work at contentment in certain seasons and pockets of my life.
Yeah.
Being content, being single and knowing there was purpose in that, and it was okay. There's nothing wrong with me. I mean, anyway, I'm not going to get into that. I was going to go off on a tangent, but it's like sometimes something is wrong with you, but I won't say, no, that's not what I'm talking about today.
Right.
But yeah, anyway.
Yeah. I mean, and just to touch on some of what you were talking about there briefly is that to a degree, contentment, regardless of it, if it has to do with relationships or if it has to do with just life in general, whether it's just the season that you're in, contentment is a choice. And, I've had to walk through that in whether it was a single season or just in a season of not wanting to be in the freaking condo that we were living in for, another 6 months, where it's like, I want a different place. And having to shift and go, Lord, help remind me to maintain a heart of contentment and gratefulness for what I have been provided with. And I think so oftentimes the enemy of contentment is comparison.
Yeah.
Where people are looking at what they're missing out on rather than what it is that they are gaining or what they do have in the season that they're in. Because someone could be walking through a single season where they're single and they really want to be in a relationship, whether it's dating or if they want to be married and that kind of stuff, where what they are gaining at that point in time, whether it has to do with the other relationships around them, whether it has to do with their professional life, whether it has to do with just what they're learning personally, there's so much that can be gained in that season to be grateful for that they wouldn't have if they were in the relationship that they wanted. Because, like, if you think about it, what are the things that a single person has that a married person doesn't? There are other obligations. There are other people that you have to make decisions with regarding your finances. There are other people involved that has to do with, what's your social schedule? What's your, travel schedule? What's your vacation look like? That kind of stuff, which, as a single person, I remember there were multiple times where I would pick up at, 11 o'clock, at night or, 2 o'clock in the morning and be like, I'm going to go drive to such and such a place for a quick trip last minute. Yo, if I woke Amy up at 2 a.m. and said, hey, let's jump in the car and go here because we have these couple days off. Let's just go for a quick trip.
I'd probably be like, you're crazy. Go back to bed.
She would not be happy with me at all. And so I think that regardless of whether it's dealing with a season of being single and wanting a relationship or anything else that you're struggling with contentment with, you have to make the choice to continue to just ask God to help your heart remain content in that season, and for you to see what it is that you do have in that season rather than what you feel like you're missing out on, and to not get caught up in the comparison game. That's why I think that social media can be great for connectivity and also just has such a negative impact on contentment because of the need, people seeing all the time what other people are doing. And they feel like they have FOMO. They're just missing out on everything else.
Yeah.
And comparison isn't necessarily always bad. And hear me out on this, is that if you are single and you want to be married, then spending time with other married people, and the caveat I'll put to this, there's nothing wrong with spending time with newlyweds, but don't look to newlyweds for your marriage advice. Because they're figuring it out. That's like asking somebody that just bought a surfboard how to surf. Because they don't know. They might say, yeah, I'm supposed to paddle out and I'm supposed to go to that wave and I have to do this and then I have to stand up and that's how you ride the wave. You don't go to a novice surfboarder to learn how to surfboard. You find someone that's been in it for 5, 10, 15, 20 years to help you learn how to navigate and learn how to do this new skill. And so if you're a single person that wants to be married, I've heard some people say, then you need to spend all your time around married people. No, please don't do that. Because then you're not spending time with single folks that are also looking to be married.
That's true.
But it is important to be in, like if you're in a small group at your church, don't be at a small group that's all just young single people because no one knows what the heck they're doing. But if you're in a small group that is a mixed group of people where you have some people that are married, some people that have young kids, some people that have kids that are out of college, that where there's a variety, and you can begin to look to these other people that have been married for years and have the knowledge and have had the experiences, you can begin to look at their marriage and say, these are the qualities of a marriage that I want.
Mm-hmm. Well, and even just paying attention to qualities you don't want.
That too.
In a relationship or in, the person that you marry, like pay attention to that too. And not in a I'm being picky kind of way, but in a wise, thoughtful way.
So if you're in a season of singleness and you're trying to figure out how do I navigate this, I want to be in a relationship, all of these other things, it is important to maintain the focus on what it is that you're currently gaining in this season, as well as I think that it's also a time of setting. This is going to sound weird. Some people might think I'm whack. Some people might say I'm being harsh. But there's also an importance in setting a realistic expectation of what your next healthy relationship looks like. Because you and I have had this conversation where I did not check every box on her list at all.
Well, I mean, probably vice versa too.
Yeah. I mean, well, granted, here's the difference between guys and girls.
We probably have more boxes.
I didn't really have a list.
Yeah, well, that makes sense.
All I knew was that I wanted somebody that loved the Lord and was willing to walk with me on this crazy journey of life and follow the Lord in that. Women typically have more of a list than the guys do.
Yeah, that's not wrong.
And guys, there's nothing wrong with having some kind of list. But most of the guys I've talked to have pretty shallow lists. A lot of it is physical. Get over it. Because guess what? 50 years from now, the Instagram model that you married ain't going to look like that Instagram model.
Or in a few years after she has her first baby.
Everything going to change. Everything going to change.
Yeah.
What matters is the character and the integrity and the personality of the person that you marry.
Right.
My mom always says, marry funny because it lasts longer than looks.
I married funny.
And we make each other laugh all the time.
Yeah. Even if nobody knows what we're laughing about.
And so with that is, if you're single and you're in a single season, make friends with people. It's okay to go on dates with multiple people. Hot take. Some people will strongly disagree. No, if you're going to go on dates with people, it should be one person at a time. Yo.
Well, it's like getting to know you. Like, let's hang out. Let's get to know each other a little bit. It's not a romantic thing. It's you're hanging out. You're getting to know each other.
I've told this to guys and girls alike. If you are going out on dates with 5 people at one time, Let me finish.
Sorry. Yeah, I had a thought, and anyway, continue.
If you're going out on dates with 5 people at one time, there's nothing wrong with that unless you're being promiscuous or you're leading people on.
Yeah. They all think they're the only person you're seeing.
Right. If you're in a situation where you're just getting to know people, there's nothing wrong with going to grab a meal or grab dinner, or which is a meal, or
a coffee
or a drink or whatever. There's nothing wrong with that if you're just getting to know somebody one-on-one.
Yeah.
Now, we have said before, be cautious on what is it that you're sharing? How intimate are the things that you're sharing?
Yeah.
Because
you're getting to know each other. You're not, you're like trying to see if you'd even be good friends. You're not trying to like pour out your traumas and all your hurts and all the things that the Lord has told you and all the deep, intimate.
Yes.
No, save it. Save it for later.
Yeah.
Way later.
Yeah. But if you're a guy doing this or if you're a girl doing this, A, I think it's okay. B, be open about it. Like, you'd be like, I'm seeing other people. I'm not dating anyone. I have gone on dates with some
I'm not in a relationship with anyone.
Right.
We're hanging out.
But as soon as there is one of those people that catches your fancy and you say, I want to be more intentional with this person. I want to spend a lot more time with this person because I really like them. Then it's time to cut off the rest.
Mm-hmm.
There's no more going on dates with those people. It might be okay if they're still like in the same friend group.
Right.
That's fine.
Just like the one-on-one
Went on a
stuff.
couple dates. Not a big deal. But as soon as there's somebody, honor every other person that you've been talking to and say, hey, I've started seeing this person. We're getting kind of serious. We actually started dating.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to go from there. So I can't see you one-on-one anymore. But we can still hang out. Like, there's nothing weird. We went on a couple dates. It didn't jive. That's okay.
Yeah. I mean, and if somebody feels uncomfortable with the hanging out one-on-one, like, then just hang out with friends.
Yeah.
Like, you don't have to hang out one-on-one. We're just saying, like, it's okay. Like, keep it in public places. Again, you're not trying to lead anybody on. You're not trying to get romantic every time you hang out with somebody.
I think so long as you're walking with integrity, with intentionality, of how you're figuring that out. In a single season, it's okay for you to go on dates as you're trying to figure out if there's someone that there is a potential relationship with. But just be intentional about the people, the friendships that you're building in general. I've been in the scenario where I've been the third wheel for a long time. I used to live with a couple where I was the third wheel for everything. The three of us went everywhere together. And that was fine. I dated some women in that time period, and none of those worked, and that's okay. Because I got you, babe.
Yes, you did.
And now there's some of our closest, dearest friends.
Yeah.
And
not the people you dated, the people you lived with.
Correct. Good clarification. And so just with that is just be intentional about the friendships that you're having. Don't continually pursue a romantic dating relationship and neglect true, genuine friendship.
Yeah. And I think something I'll add is I know for me and like, friends and other women that I've talked to, this has been a thing for them too. But I know in my own life, one of the things that would rob contentment from me, and I guess part of this is comparison, but I guess it like leans into that a little bit. But something that would rob contentment from me when I was single was, it almost feels like sometimes as a woman, I don't know if guys do this too or not, but as a woman, especially again, like I said, with feeling like, I wanted I wanted to be married. All I really wanted growing up was to be a wife and mom. I didn't have career goals. It's not that I had jobs, but I didn't have a career in mind. I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom.
Right.
And I wanted to be married. I wanted to raise kids. And so it was a really strong desire for me. And so, I mean, I had guy friends and everything, but and I wasn't always like looking at them, but it's hard to like want something that bad and not constantly have your head on a swivel every time a guy goes by and be like, ooh, what about him? Oh, what about him? And like, you have to guard yourself against that.
Right.
Because that can be a natural tendency. And there's nothing wrong with like, I'm trying to figure out how to say this. Like you were talking about, like, there's nothing wrong with going on dates to get to know somebody. It'd be like, could this potentially be something? Like, that's okay. But when it's constant in your mind, like your head's on a swivel. What about this person? What about that person? What about literally every person that walks by? Are they a potential spouse for me? Like, that robs contentment like nothing else.
Yeah.
Like that, when it comes to robbing that contentment in a single place, like being single, because it's constantly wondering back here. I mean, sometimes very front of mind, but most of the time it's just back here. Like most of the time, like I would reflect back and be like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize I was doing that. Because I did try to guard my heart and my mind from constantly doing that. But there were times I would catch myself in it, or I'd look back and be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I was doing that. What in the world? And I would realize it would throw me into a place of like, oh, man, why am I not married yet? Why am I not in a relationship yet? Man, I just want like this. Lord, why can't it be my timing yet? Like blah, 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 all this stuff. And I had to really work on that balance of guarding that space for me, because there were times I didn't do it very well and it consumed my mind, and other times I did it overly well, where it was harmful to me in the sense that I became like cold to guys. Like I was warm and open with the ladies in my life, but guys, I was almost like cold, and I didn't even know it until a mentor of mine told me about that. A guy was like, is she like nice? Because it wasn't that I was being mean, but they were like, she like doesn't pay us any attention. I was like, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I was like trying not to like go there, you know? And so I had to learn the balance of not going too far in either direction, and like just Amy, just be Amy. Just be your friendly self.
Yeah.
Love on people, but just be mindful of where the boundaries are, the healthy, good boundaries for yourself and for other people. That when I would start catching myself, I had to like, and I wasn't always great at it, but I had to train myself, and I had like mentors helping me with this, to like train myself to not go there and to keep it in a safe place in my own mind and heart, to where I wasn't leading myself on. I'm not even leading somebody else on. I'm literally like, don't build up something in your mind about somebody you saw for 10 seconds. You know, women have a tendency to do that. We do. Okay, if we're honest with ourselves, ladies, we do that sometimes. We like see a whole future with somebody we only saw for 10 seconds and we're never going to see them again. Like, we do that. And not every girl, but it happens. And so I had to train myself to not go there.
Yeah.
For something I wanted so bad. And to just trust that the Lord had me in his hands, and he knew what he was doing with my life, and that I just had to follow his leading and his timing, and I had to trust it. And I wasn't always happy with it, but I had to trust it. And sometimes I wrestled, and other times it was like smooth sailing, contentment came easy, and other seasons I was like, it was a struggle. And you know, you reach different ages or different seasons and different points in your life where, you know, maybe I was very content and now I hit this point and now I'm wrestling a little bit. And now it feels like I got to work on that all over again. I got to work to be content all over again. And it's like when I reach that place of discontent in being single, I have to ask myself, sometimes someone very close to me, or, you know, and asking the Lord, why am I not content right now? What is it? Am I comparing? Am I putting my head on a swivel? Am I discouraged? Am I upset that it hasn't happened yet? Like, what's the thing? Am I fearful that it'll never happen? Like, what is the root of why I'm not content? And deal with that. And
Yeah.
sometimes it's a real simple fix. And sometimes it's, I really got to do some digging in my heart and mind to uproot this thing and work on that. And then, okay, now I'm back in the flow of contentment again.
Yeah, I think you were never necessarily cold to me, but you were very cool hand Luke when I even got to the point. I
don't know what that means.
It means you played your cards super chill.
Y'all, he's always using phrases and lingo that it goes over my head. I never know what any of them mean. Okay.
What does bussin' mean?
I don't know.
We literally just saw it on No Demo Reno yesterday.
I still don't remember.
It means it's like fire. It's great.
Fire.
Anyways.
I know what that one means.
You played it very cool hand Luke, even when I got to the point of when I asked you out, because I had no idea if you liked me. I just thought you were nice to everyone.
Well, at least you thought I was just nice to everybody and not like, is she nice? Like that one guy said to my mentor. Oh my gosh.
So, I mean, there's that. And then, I mean, sometimes we have to figure out is our desire for relationship or anything else becoming an idol?
Yeah.
Because I won't necessarily say that marriage had become an idol for me, but it wasn't until like I had wanted to be married again so badly because I wanted a family. I wanted to be married. I wanted to be in a relationship with somebody, that there were things that the Lord had to deal with in my heart, that it wasn't until I said, you know what? I'm completely giving this to you.
Mm-hmm.
And when the time comes, the time will come. But I'm not looking for anybody. I'm not seeking this out. It's me and you, God. This is yours.
Mm.
And when the time is right, I know you'll bring it.
Yeah.
It wasn't until that point that there was a release from the comparison and the worry that I would ever be married again. And then it wasn't long after that all of a sudden Miss Pretty Amy shows up. And I've been hanging out with her for a few months before that. And all of a sudden I'm like, she cute. And like I hadn't had
Jesus
any of those
was like, okay,
before.
you're ready for her now.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it's just making sure that the desires that you have are lining up in the right place, that you're not caught up in idolization or comparison.
Yeah. I think what you're saying, like one of my favorite visuals for me is like the open hands. It's like, Lord, I want this. Yeah. And sometimes he promises it to us. And there are times that he doesn't promise it, but he still takes our desires into account, you know. But it's like, Lord, I desire this, or you promise this to me, but I'm not going to hold it clenched, white knuckle fist it. Like, I'm going to leave it open-handed. If you give it, you're also able to take it away. And I'm going to trust you no matter what you choose to do with it. And you'll help me walk through the season if you give it to me or you don't.
Yeah.
And that's really hard, especially when it's something you want so bad, like a marriage, which is, I mean, that's specifically what we're talking about is relationships and marriage and all that and single. But that's one of the hardest things to be like, Lord, if you want to take it away, if you want to take this desire from me, I trust you. And to let him do it if he does it. Like that, to be able to have that kind of trust with the Lord is so hard. But that's necessary, I think, also to be content.
Yeah.
Specifically in the arena of relationship, marriage, wanting, you know, all of that. Sorry, I just bumped that. But just open-handed. Mm-hmm. Because if we're just clenched fists like this too, with, oh, this is my desire, or, oh, this is what he promised me, like, we can't receive anything else he would even want to give us if our hands aren't open to receive it either. We can't give it up and we can't receive anything else. All we have is this. And the Lord can do so much more with open hands than he can do with clenched fist.
Yeah.
And just don't expect it to ever be in the timing you see in your own head.
Mm-hmm.
Because it almost never works out that way.
Yeah.
And just to give a little bit of background, I know we got to wrap it up here shortly.
Yep.
To give a little bit of background, I mean, you vaguely mentioned, like, or alluded to, you'd been married before.
Yeah.
So your background with being single and my background with being single is totally different.
Mm-hmm.
You grew up, I mean, in your teens and 20s, like you dated several different people, and you were married once before meeting me, and divorced before you met me.
Clarification.
Yeah, I'm not the reason he got divorced. He met me after. But then I'm the complete opposite. You were the first person I ever dated. You were my first kiss. Like, you were the first guy I romantically held hands with. I mean, literally, you were my first in everything. And I mean, I guess not my first crush. I had crushes. I had plenty of those. I just kept them very, very close. I was embarrassed every time I had a crush. So I had lots of crushes, but I never dated anybody. I was never going to ask a guy out. Nobody asked me out. So I was like, well, found out later down the road, there were plenty of guys that actually liked me, but none of them ever asked me out, except one guy in high school. And I was like, no. I forgot about that. He did ask me out. I was like, no. He asked me out through IM. And I was like, you can't ask me out to my face. I don't want it. So anyway, there was that. But I had lots of guy friends, which I'm very thankful for.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody ever asked me out. So I just remember sometimes just being really frustrated. I'm like, no, am I just the buddy? Like, am I not feminine enough? I don't understand. The Lord did kind of show me, I mean, this is me personally. This isn't everybody that, is in the situation I was in. But the Lord did show me at one point in my early 20s, like, I'm hiding you on purpose. I don't want them to see you. Because you don't need everyone to see you. You just need the guy I have for you to see you. And when that guy comes, he will, when the time's right, and it'll be good. And that was not always easy, but that did help for me to be content. Up until that point, I was like, why? Why does nobody ever ask me out?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, we had completely different experiences with that. The way we had to navigate being single and not being single and all of that. So we had very different lessons that we learned along the way based off of those experiences. But man, like, I wanted to be married in my early 20s. Like, I wanted it so bad. But looking back, I'm like, woo, Jesus, thank you. I got married in my mid-20s, which is still very early. But Jesus knew I was not ready. As much as I thought I was ready, I was not ready to be married. I had a lot of maturing growing up to do still. Had a lot of things that the Lord needed to work out in me. Could it have worked? Yeah, it could have. But I'm grateful that he made me wait till 25 to get married. Which, again, looking back, it's like, that's not very long at all. But at the time, it was excruciating having to wait. But because of that, I did learn a lot. I grew a lot in my relationship with the Lord. I grew in friendships with other people. I mean, and then you came along and it was great. The end.
Ta-da! Awesome. Well, thanks so much for sharing.
You too, babe.
We'll finish it out with
we
our
answered the question. We went on a few rabbit trails there, but
I think so. I hope it was an encouragement. So let us know. Be sure to put in the comments, or send us a DM, or comment on our socials if this was beneficial. I hope it was. All right. That's a strange question.
You don't have to answer it.
Which of my
Or
insecurities drives you crazy?
Which of your insecurities drives me crazy? This is the only thing about doing this on the podcast that I don't like, is that sometimes I'm like, I don't know. I need to think about this for a minute. I don't know how to answer this. Because honestly, my first instinct or my first reaction is like, you don't have any insecurities. You do. But they don't immediately come to mind because you're a much more confident person than I am. So I guess for me, it would be, and the word isn't coming to mind, but in a nutshell, in general, you're a very confident, very competent person. You lead well, you have high productivity, like you get stuff done, and you know that. But there are times when you're in the middle of all of that, and it's like you come home and all of a sudden you're just like, I don't know if I'm doing enough. I don't know if am I doing this well? Am I doing this right? Like, which, we all have those questions sometimes, but for you, it's like, it's pretty much always when, yes, you are doing it well. You are doing it right. You're leading well. You're getting stuff done like a boss. Like you're, you're in a good spot. And I think it's when you start to get worn down, like you're starting to get tired, is when you start to get insecure about, am I doing these things well? Are people actually taking into account what I'm doing? Do people actually take me seriously? Yeah. And I'm like, people always hear what you have to say. People always take you seriously. People always are like, dang, AJ knocks it out of the park. Like, that's the kind of thing people always say about you. People never say about you. I know people say never say always or never. But seriously, I've never heard a single person say, wow, AJ really dropped that ball. Never. But in your mind, you're constantly dropping balls. And that's the thing I think I see in you that I'm like, that you're insecure about, that I'm like, but you literally never do. They're always up in the air. Or you're always like shooting. I don't know. I don't know what you're doing with all these like balls that you got going on, juggling them or whatever, but you never drop them. And
that's not true.
Okay, I guess I shouldn't say never. We all do sometimes, but not to the extent that in your mind you when you actually let yourself have that conversation and be vulnerable in that place. That's the insecurity that I see, that I guess in a way, it doesn't like drive, like I don't get mad at you, but I'm like, dude, you are literally the most productive, the most confident, most competent person I think I've literally ever met. You ain't dropping the balls. You're good. Like, so anyway, yeah.
Thank you so much. That's very nice.
I love you.
I appreciate that. For me, for you, I think the insecurity that drives me the most crazy is that you don't feel competent, and that, in preparation for stuff like this with the podcast, or if it's meeting with a couple, or just talking through and giving advice to anybody, you're like, I don't know if I have the right words to say. What am I going to do? I'm like, girl, wisdom falls out of your mouth like crazy. Like it's, and it comes from how you grew up and what was instilled in you and your relationship with the Lord. And it's like, girl, like Holy Spirit is tight. And we know that you rely on Holy Spirit so much, and that you're not found wanting or lacking or saying anything strange or dumb that's going to lead somebody wrong. You have the words, you have the wisdom, you just psych yourself out about it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, just start talking. You'll be fine. But
Well, thanks.
yeah. Well, thank you all so much for joining us on today's episode. You got anything else to add?
No.
All right. Well, that's another episode in the books. Be sure if you have a question, fill it out at the Google form. Hit us up on our social media. You can find us. And until next time, I'm AJ Selby.
I'm Amy Selby.
And this is the Intentional Life Podcast.
Those church bells in the background.